Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome on live HSE Talk with Qadir Mahmood Soomro. Today, our topic is Contractor HSE Management, and today we have a very interesting topic because, as you know, that in current era, one of the challenging tasks is to control the contractor because we have a different type of contractors in the market. We have a well experienced contractor, we have a low experienced contractor, we have a contractor with no new knowledge or expertise in the system. So what we are doing normally, we are facing a lot of issues with regards to the contractors. So this topic was chosen because contractors are causing a lot of accidents, and due to that many clients, many we can call them owners, are losing their business in the market. Because if you have a good contractor and he will provide you effective services, it will aid in your profit, in your reputation, and in this way you will be able to see how people are coming, developing the contractor management system. So today we have a very well experienced and man of the knowledge and competent person, Mr. Adil Lawson. He is a CMI chartered member of Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. He has 20 years experience in HSE learning and development and training and leadership. He has 10 years specific training experience. He has been working with different international, well-reputed multinational companies like Qatar Petroleum, Orex JTL, ExxonMobil, and Occidental, and etc. So, without wasting our time, let's welcome our guest, our brother Adil Lathan is here, one of my colleague, my friend, my brother, and we would like to welcome you on board, Adil. It's been a great that you took time from your busy schedule, and I was just sharing your profile with our team, means the viewers who are watching us, and I shared them that you have done a couple of tremendous achievements, especially training 50,000 people, and you change their behaviors to work safely. Really congratulate on that, and I want to thank you once again for your time. I will welcome you, and now the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks very much, Qadir. It's lovely to be here as well. I think the last time we saw each other was probably around 13 years ago. But I mean, I know we've always been in contact and everything like that since we worked together in Shell, where we were all involved in training 50,000 contractors. It wasn't, I think it was a very, very big group effort. And it was a successful project at the end of the day. At the end of the day, for one of the biggest projects in the Middle East at the time, I think it was. And obviously, that project's gone to grow and become successful for years and years. And thanks for the introduction to the topic. And you're very right. I mean, it's one of the contractor HSE management is one of the topics now. I mean, it has been quite popular for the last, I would say, 15 to 20 years. But I think where really the popularity has risen has been since 2014, since we had that economic downturn a little bit, especially in the obviously oil and gas and the construction industries. So what has happened, that's obviously got companies to start obviously looking at ways to save costs, as well as to obviously get the work done, but try to do these in an efficient way. So the focus has been a lot on specialist contractors to do certain levels of work. And obviously we can see this trend moving more and more as well, where big organizations are relying on such contractors to do specific activities, and then obviously the contractor does the job and obviously goes and moves on. So again, that has been a trend that I see obviously moving forward and becoming more common as we go through as we move on. Now, with that, I think the role of the health and safety professional has changed quite a bit as well. Now, the expectation is with health and safety that they need to start getting involved with all elements of contractor management. And I've seen that slight gradual move into certain elements of the commercial side, the contracting side, reviewing contractor cultures before engaging with contractors to come and work in organizations. So one of the things, obviously, I had been working on personally over the last probably 5 years now, and very recently I've launched an IOSH certified program on this, a 3-day program, which is a Contractor HSE Management program. But we've started looking at all the elements where health and safety personnel need to get involved with, right from the initial point of the contract. The traditional way that we do it is, okay, the contractor mobilizes, all the commercial work, all the contractual work is done by procurement departments, and then the safety professional gets involved the second that contractor hits the ground. We start looking at their mobilizations, their HSE plans, we start doing the risk assessments, we start getting involved with permitting, and so on, so on. But a lot of times what organizations maybe fail to understand, or it's something that they need to obviously develop a little bit more understanding, is that a lot of the HSE work comes from the initial contracting stages, where it comes to assessing the culture of the contractor that they're going to get involved with. So when you're assessing cultures, that's quite it's quite a broad area, because you need to look at quite a lot of elements. You need to look at the levels of education. You need to look at the culture of the country. If you look at working in various international countries, the economy of the country actually affects this. Now, and then also, so you're looking at that various levels of culture, and you need to basically start looking at assessments. So a lot of the top tier organizations now, they've realized that, and then at the initial stages, they have individuals who are going and obviously looking at some of the contractors that they want to get involved with in the future. It doesn't just stop at, yes, I'm going to look at their ISO certification, I'm going to look at their documents, because these kind of things, need to go beyond that a little bit more. You need to start looking at that culture. This person is going to be coming to your organization for the next 5 years, or for the next 2 years, 5 years, whichever size of a contract it is. So you need to be looking at specific elements to see how that contractor is going to gel with your organization when they come. So the cultural aspect of this is very, very important, and you can control that to a certain extent in the early stages of a contract. One of the other things that very, very much, and a lot of companies fail to see this until it's very, very late in the day, and a lot of obviously organizations have learned this in the hard way, is a lot of the issues that you might be facing with the contractor as they're on site is because we didn't get the type of contract right in the beginning, okay? So if you've got things like lump sum type of contracts, the contractor is going to behave very, very differently to if it's a manpower contract or if it's lump sum plus materials. So these are elements where, it sets the tone of how that contract's going to work. Now, if you know the type of work as a safety professional that's going to happen, whether it's maintenance, whether it's a maintenance activity, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's facilities management, or any certain type of industry, you can basically recommend what type of contract would actually work best for that type of activity, right? So, for example, if I'm looking, for example, at a lump sum contract, yes, you're going to come and do this job for the next 6 months. This is how much it's going to cost, right? You can expect shortcuts on safety because there's no area for movement there if they haven't planned this initially to spend any more money on safety if something does happen. So once you first have the first incident or the second incident within that contract, you just see there's just no possibility to create a better, safe or working environment within that contract. So these kind of things really affect contracts. And that, from a health and safety perspective, from a safety professional's kind of view, you need to look at the type of contract that it is, and then start suggesting the mode of contract that that contract might require. Is it a contract where we're going to be, as the client, we're going to be managing the HSE side of it? Or maybe us as the client, we're not that knowledgeable when it comes to health and safety. We want the contractor themselves to manage everything to do with health and safety. So these type of modes affect the type of contract that is being that's being implemented. And as a health and safety professional, we really need to understand that the culture, the types of contract, the mode that we're going to be approaching. So these things come in the early contractual stages, and I still think, and I've been working with quite a few organizations worldwide where we've developed policies together with commercial departments, with contract departments, with legal departments, but we've always had the safety professionals involved with those teams. In the beginning, it was something which was alien to them. They say, oh, well, why does a safety guy need to be involved in us negotiating the contract? Because they would understand some of the things that might happen on site later on, okay? A lot of you safety, obviously, professionals attending today as well, and Qadir, you probably know this as well. When it comes to day-to-day activities in health and safety, a lot of the issues that you're facing is to do with contractor welfare. It's taking a contractor a long time to mobilize to site. Are they getting their meals on time? Or do we have the right rest shelters, especially in areas where obviously there's this high temperatures, such as the Middle East, for example. So a lot of these things are not planned during that contractual stages. Okay, it's something that, yes, the contractor will mobilize, and then we start having to deal with these problems. So these things health and safety professionals understand, and they need to basically take it back to that initial contractual stages, and then obviously get involved with such a thing. So that's one stage of it. And then we start moving to in a stage where we're obviously picking from a number of contracts, how we're doing that evaluation. Is safety always put as the top priority? Yeah. A lot of organizations, of course, again, look for the cheapest contractor. Now, I never recommend to go to the cheapest contractor, but we also have to look at it from an economical point of view. Okay, the economy might not be so well, and the budgets might not be there. So value for money is very, very important. However, we need to basically always set that minimum level of safety acceptance before we can start looking at, yeah, it's past that safety level. Yeah, I've got two contractors. These contractors don't pass. I'm only selecting these two, right? I can go for the cheapest. That's fine. I can go for value for money, but that standard has to be met. And that's something that we look at as safety professionals during these evaluation stages. Yeah, and then we start looking obviously at the various elements with it that they need to be submitting. We might start looking at, let's look at the welfare of some of these organizations. How do they look after their contractors after the hours of work? Is welfare an important thing for them? Do they have value for people? Yeah, is there any ethical implications there when it comes to hiring the contractors? Are the accommodations in a good standard? Are they treating their people well? These are the things that, as safety professionals, we need to start getting involved with in early stages of looking at contracts. And then, of course, we start moving to the stages that you all are aware of, and it's something that obviously we've commonly dealt with in health and safety, which is the mobilizations. Do they have their plans? Do they have their HSE plans? Do they have their method statements for the different types of activities that they were doing? What kinds of work would require permitting? What kind of work can we just control via job safety analysis or a method statement? And we just need to have that kind of right balance of how we control the various activities on site. Okay, so that's a little bit of the things that personally for me it's been very important. It's something that I've been working on to try and get organizations to focus on, getting those initial safety perspectives correct in the early stages of hiring contractors. And then, of course, when it comes to mobilization, we're all aware of that. I mean, the standards don't change. We have the basic safety requirements. We have our standards. We have our control of contractors. We have our welfare standards. So all of these things are things that we're aware of. the area that we really need to work on, I think, Qadir, I think you'll appreciate that as well, is the early stages as well. And that's the area where I think health and safety needs to really get pushing and start getting involved with an organization. So that's just a little bit of a brief from my side to contractor management and where we're struggling at the moment. Not just in one country, but pretty much worldwide. We fail to see that health and safety needs to be involved a lot of times in those early stages of assigning contracts, or when it comes to writing contracts, when it comes to developing plans for overall projects. So now a lot of people ask me about how they can get that education, how they can get that level. So very recently, it only came out in November last year. IOSH, I was working with a couple of colleagues over a number of years where we basically developed an IOSH program where it looks at what health and safety professionals need to be involved with in those early stages. So it's something that we can obviously teach you. It's something that you can get involved in, and you can take that and implement it within your organization as well, to make sure that your safety team are actually involved with those early stages of contracts. So that's a little bit of a brief, guys, from my side. I'm happy enough to take any questions or anything like that from your side, Qadir. If there's anything else from your side, or any of the audience have any particular queries, I'm more than happy to start looking into that. I think just the speaker, the speaker.
Thank you very much. It was a nice brief about the contractor management, and as you know that nowadays this has been one of the challenge for us to manage the contractor. One of the key item which you mentioned in your discussion was budget to hire a contractor. Do you think, is it important to have a budget in the project management to choose a suitable contractor, and how it can help? What will be the benefits?
Okay, I mean, a lot of times if the budget is there, yes. I mean, I always think, I mean, the better contractors, even health and safety, we've got to be honest about it. The companies that have better health and safety records and better health and safety policies are more expensive. Yeah, there's no denying that, and I'm not here to say we have to always go for the most expensive. All I'm saying here is we need to, as a company, set what our basic requirements are and make sure that we basically stick to that, and we get the agreement all the way from the top. Yes, there might be 2 or 3 contractors who meet that standard. We might want to go, yes, I'm going to go for the best. We might be able to afford it, but again, if the budget is not there, we're always working with budgets. This is a fact of life. But we always need to set that basic standard when it comes to working with the various contractors. But I do understand that's not always possible to go for the best, because again, it's always costly. So, but it's all about setting that standard as a client. A speaker again.
Sorry, because of doubling, I have to go far off. So what I'm trying to tell you, that being an HSE expert, how do you advise to an HSE professional to look for to improve the performance of a contractor? What things he can do being at site and support the contractor to perform his work in a safe manner?
Okay, I mean, a lot of times, so if we're looking at the latter stages where the contractor's already mobilized, I think really you as a HSE professional, you just have to look at what type of activities are involved on your site, and you need to have a very, very clear plan how you're going to control those. Okay, So first of all, there's types of activities we all know, and it's, I think, standard across industry that it has to be controlled by permit. Okay, so for example, your high risk activities, your lifting, your working at height, your confined spaces, your excavations, your lockout tagout, or your electrical type activities. So these are some of the common examples of high risk type of activities where maybe we would be controlling it through permit. So I always think a permit to work system is still very, very important to make sure a client sets the basic requirements that's needed for the work. Okay. But again, one of the things with permits is it becomes a paperwork exercise a lot of times, and we've all seen it. I mean, we've all seen the whole thing where, okay, I'm only using this permit. Okay, let me just sign what I need so I can start the work, and it just takes the point off the whole permit controlling health and safety. So we need to be clever on how we manage this. Does the job, is it risky enough for it to require a permit in the first place? So let's just look at those main ones which require a permit, require the supervision as part of that permit. But anything else which we consider maybe lesser risk, maybe low risk, or even medium risk at a lot of times. What other systems are we going to use to control it? Is it enough to have maybe a method statement? We review a method statement, we make sure that that's signed across, and then maybe on a day-to-day, we have a JSA, which obviously again makes it easier for the personnel who's on the site. But maybe we need a policy where, again, there's a pre-task discussion. How do we control a pre-task discussion? Is there a supervisor who obviously monitors that work and has a discussion with the team at the beginning of every shift? So that's again some of the standard types of precautions we have throughout industry, and that works well. The thing that doesn't work well a lot of times is we tend to have one rule and we apply it for everything, right? So from a health and safety perspective, we need to be a little bit open-minded about this and say, is there a genuine risk for us to be permitting things? Is there a genuine risk for us to be having, assign someone to be monitoring this job at the whole time? So this is, I think, a little bit higher role for health and safety professionals, where they start need to looking at these jobs and start saying, I don't want to become bureaucratic. I don't want to be a bureaucratic organization where everything requires tons and tons of paperwork. Yeah, that does apply in some cases. If I'm doing a lifting job, a 20-ton lifting job, yes, I want to see all the documentations for the crane, for the weight, how it's done, all the attachments, the training certificates. Yes, there's a lot of documentation that needs to be checked. But so some other type of work, if it might be just basic cleaning or anything like that, does it require for us to go through permit activities and things like that? Again, these things are questionable. And as a health and safety professional, we have to question things a little bit. Is there a need for it? Is there a risk? Is there a genuine risk there where I need to be doing certain things like that? So I think the role of health and safety professionals, yes, let's start monitoring the high risk activities where there's a risk of someone getting hurt, but still let's start and manage things in a sensible way when it comes to permitting, when it comes to control of work. I hope that answers your question, the question there, Qadir.
Very well explained, Adil. We have another question, because in the background I have one question. What are the factors to be considered to ensure we are selecting a competent contractor for the client or for the organization?
So if to find out a competent contractor. Okay, I mean, it's a good question. I think there's a lot of things we want to look at before we decide, obviously, on a contractor. I'd want to personally start looking at previous history. I'd want to know if they have previous history within the country of work, by the way. That makes a very, very big difference. You do get contractors who maybe they've done, international contractors who might have done activities in European countries or other Asian countries, but then they come to the Middle East and then they give you records of what they've done in another country. For me, a lot of times looking at contracts, that's always been a little bit iffy for me, because an important part understanding contracts or having experience is working with the workforce within that locality. A lot of times when it comes to the competency of a contractor, it depends a lot on the culture. It depends on the general level of education, the level of knowledge that you might have in a certain territory. And that really needs to be taken into account. So for me, past history or past experience would be a very, very big one. What I would also look at is cultural assessments. Okay, cultural assessments is interesting. I've been involved in quite a few of these. Over the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of organizations have started doing this. What they do is they'll ask the contractor to provide them 2 of their clients, and they'll go and spend 1 or 2 days, and they'll go and monitor how that contractor is performing. They'll want to know about how the culture is. They'll want to know, this contractor, is safety a way of life for them? Is it a priority? Do they only do it for compliance? Are they a proactive company when it comes to managing health and safety? Are they very reactive? Okay. Do they only wait till an accident happens and then they start moving, or do they have, do they have everything in place? Are they very proactive? Do they have a good near-miss culture? Do they have a good behavioral safety culture? These are the kind of things that I would like to look at when it comes to before I go to select a contractor. Yes, as a standard, we'd be looking at all the documentation as well. Have they got their management system documentations? The 45,001 is a big one now. Do they have their basic 9,001s? From an environmental point of view, the 14,001. What standards do they work with? Do they work with the local standards as well as maybe international best practices, OSHA regulations, HSE regulations? So I would like to know that kind of thing and how they apply these kind of areas as well. But again, looking also at the competencies, I want to know what they're doing for training. And that's very, very important. How they take care of the training. Do they set training as a leading indicator? Okay. So what I like to do is I like to have companies when they're presenting as part of a tender or part of a bid, I'd like to say something where they call a training matrix, where they have every position and every training, and they basically tell me once this guy is mobilized, he will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For this position, we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't necessarily need to know the person's name, but for this position, this would be the basic competencies. He will have them. If he doesn't have them before he mobilizes, within the first 3 months, within the first 6 months, as he's mobilized onto the project, we will make sure he gets those competencies. You need to also be very, very clear. As a client, are you providing those competencies, or do you expect the contractor to have these things before they arrive? Supervision, how they manage health and safety, these are all things that I want to look at to obviously demonstrate that competency for a contractor before they arrive to my site, for example. And again, I hope that did answer the question there, Qadir.
Thank you, Adil. The next question is, like, we hired a competent contractor, but as an organization, we have to supervise the contractor in the right direction. So how do you explain the supervision of contractor and how it can be done to ensure safety culture is being developed with the contractor and it will aid in the safe completion of the project? Okay.
Again, it's very, very, very good questions, and it's something that we see on a daily basis. The thing is, when you get a contractor arriving to your site or coming to your site for the first time, there's a lot of work. So you might be operating at this standard. The contractor comes at this standard. So there's a gap there which you need to work on. Now the gap, they don't just arrive and that gap is closed. You can't do it over day. So it's going to take a lot of time to achieve that. So sometimes it takes maybe 3 months to 6 months to even basically get the basic competency there, where they understand your culture, they're involved with your culture and everything like that. So a lot of it is, as a client company, maybe offering a lot of the internal programs to your contractors as well. So developing the contractor in a way that they understand, how you work, what your way of working is. And that kind of supports that culture a little bit more. There needs to be obviously assessment programs to find out, to ensure that they have that basic they have that basic competency. But as a day-to-day, I always recommend things like safety committees. So whether you have a group of safety personnel that obviously from the contractor side that get together with the client safety personnel and obviously discuss what are the aspects, what they need to be looking for, that gives them a better understanding of the areas of concern that the contractor has and lets the contractor know what they need to be looking after. Getting involved with obviously monthly committees. So I really think every company should have their own monthly committees where various departments within the organization are involved, and they talk about health and safety, and they give recommendations on how to improve certain things. And these are areas where you do want to look at your contractors and have your contractors involved in. So a lot of the companies, I say that the more advanced companies, when it comes to obviously health and safety cultures, they start looking at involving contractors in their behavioral-based safety programs. They obviously have certain incentives maybe they want to involve the contractor with as well. So that's mean to encourage them to get participating and to develop the same culture that the organization has throughout the whole contractor organization working for you as well. So these are some of the things. Now, one of the other that I see a lot of times, Qadir, in our contractor safety management program, it's one of my key things that I always focus on. I say it right from the beginning. A lot of the issues that the contractor has is because of the client. It's not down to the contractor themselves, okay? And we have to be very, very clear about this, okay? Because you can't just say a contractor coming into work that they're the only persons to blame. These kind of things, it's a two-way marriage, and there's both parties to a certain extent have to take responsibility. So one big thing for me is the whole, it's not me, it's the contractor, does not work for me. And we all have to kind of change your mindset to say, if an organization is working for us, they're part of us for the next few months, okay? And we have to collectively take blame. Once we basically have that mindset and everyone in that organization, things are going to start working smoothly for you. If you kind of have that whole separation where I have, look at my LTA, it's absolutely beautiful. I've been on 0 TRIR for the last 2.5 years. The contractor one's over here. I'm not really going to show you this one. I'm just going to keep that. If we can do things collectively, where basically our LTIs, how we report our incidents is collective for us and the contractor, that is one very important step where we can basically know, okay, everything that's happening, we're working together, we're together in this. That's a very, very important factor to setting that culture. Where there's a separation, you're always going to have some kind of an issue. Okay. Now I'm not saying a contractor comes and they have to. Again, this is not about the economic side where they have to have the same benefits, all of that kind of thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when it comes to training, when it comes to site training, these kind of things. We have to treat contractors in the same manner a lot of times than the actual workers from a client side.
Again, very well explained. Thank you, Adil. Now there's one more question, like subcontractors. Sometimes we hire multiple subcontractors for similar type of the job. So do you think this is a good practice, and how it may affect the HSE performance of the contractor and the client as well?
We're talking here, we're talking subcontractors. So a client, they'll have a contractor. That contractor might have a subcontractor, correct? So one of the things that I look at when it comes to this as well, I would like and this is again a very, very good point, I would like to see the contractors themselves also having a good contractor management policy. So they need to assess their subcontractors, and they need to have a certain criteria in which they hire their subcontractors as well. But the same way, I would also treat the contractors. I do not want to see, and this is a personal thing for me, if I'm going to assess a contractor, we have an audit, and they said, oh, yeah, our policies are fine, this incident has nothing to do with us, it's to do with our subcontractor. I don't accept that, okay? Because as a contractor, this is for you to manage. And you need to have the policies in place to make sure that, yes, you guys, if you have a subcontractor, they're part of your organization. And you need to manage it as such as well. So yes, one of the things I'm looking at, do they have a good, my contractor, do they have a good contractor management program themselves for the hiring of subcontractors? And a lot of contractors do. They use some very, very good databases. There's actually some very, very good CRMs there where they can have all the contractors and how they manage it. They look at the documentation side, the audits, how frequent the audits take place. They have a number of self-audits they expect to see. So a lot of the contractors do have these kind of policies. They have these systems in place. And I like to see that as part of my hiring process when I engage with any contractor, really when it comes to that. The other thing I think as maybe a client organization, what you need to look at is where you have two subcontractors working on the same permit. Now, these are the kind of things where on site you might get a lot of time you get an issue. Okay, so that it might be a confined space permit in oil and gas industry, for example. So you've given a permit for that confined space, and then within the same permit you've got the guys who are doing the initial cleaning, but then you're doing the guys who might be going inside to do some NDT work or some radiography work or something like that. So this is a situation where you want to make sure that how that communication is working between the subcontractor and the contractor themselves. Have they got kind of a system where they've got one supervisor, the subcontractor goes still under the contractor supervisor and they communicate the same thing? Are they working together as a team, or are they not communicating at all? They've basically got their own activities. There's no communication of activities between them. So these are things where, as a safety guy, you need to look at where's that communication taking place, and because that is something that would affect the risk to the activities as well.
Excellent, Adil. You are a great speaker. I'm enjoying on the background, and the things are moving. I appreciate that. And the most important thing is, because in the background I'm also collecting some questions from friends. So our next question is that how a client can help the contractor to develop a HSE culture in the organization.
Again, very good. I would say let's involve them in committees. Let's involve them if we have any health and safety committees. That's a very, very big one. If we are having meetings, we need to involve the heads of the contractors or the HSE personnel from the contractor personnel, operational personnel as well. That's something that is very, very important. If we have any programs such as near-miss programs, behavioral-based safety programs, stop programs like a lot of companies might do, let's train the subcontractor, let's train the contractor to be involved with this. Let's give them the same induction, so they have that, so they have that awareness. So these are basic things that they can be involved in. A lot of companies as well do incentive programs. Now I'm a little bit hesitant when it comes to cash incentives. I've seen that throughout various industries. I don't personally think it works very well. But for me, recognition itself in the form of a certificate and things works just as good. Okay, if you can basically give that recognition to somebody who's doing work safely, it works very, very well. Again, like I said, I have my questions when it comes to the financial incentives, but a lot of organizations do that, and if they can make it work in the right way and they're incentivizing the right things, then that's fine. When it comes to incentives, however, I really need to go back to the concept of leading and lagging indicators. I don't like incentivizing things such as no accidents, or production has to reach a certain amount, or you only get your incentive if you're zero LTA, because that encourages other kind of behaviors like non-reporting and things like that. So we have to look at these things from a bigger picture side. But if it comes to making sure they're 90% on their mandatory training, that's a leading indicator. Quality of near misses provided by the contractor. Number of permits closed, number of actions for incidents closed within a certain time. These are very, very good leading indicator incentives that we could incentivize. Okay, so when it comes to incentives, yes, we involve our contractors. However, we decide what that incentive is. But we need to be clever about it. We need to start looking at the leading indicators. We can't start looking at, I'm only going to award you if you don't have any accidents. And that's something which is becoming a little bit old-fashioned, and I don't really think it's very good for a good safety culture moving forward. But again, that's my personal opinion.
Once again, thanks, Adil. Now we are going back to the subcontractor. Like the subcontractor, sometimes they come to the organization, they have never seen the risks, hazards, and the scope of work being done. Like for example, we have a floor repairing contractor. So they are also going for the shop or mall, and they are also going for the oil and gas sector. So in this type of example, what will be the role of the client to help them to uplift their behavior to perform job safely?
Okay, with these things, I always think that when that happens, that's a little bit from the client's fault as well. So this is basically the client not doing their homework in the right way. Again, I think a lot of that is dictated by budgets a lot of times, and clients going for the cheapest contractor, which again does happen. But we do have to have that standard that we should not go below. But anyway, as a safety professional, if you're ever in that situation, again, you need to make sure that the competence is there, that the communication's there. A lot of times, you get inherited this problem, or it gets given to you at your level. It's not something that you've been involved with the planning, and it's just kind of somebody's turned up and you need to do something about it. I really think it's down a lot of times to the training and the coaching and the continuous monitoring. If we could involve our contractors in behavioral-based safety programs, I think this has a very, very good positive influence in that kind of situation. But remember, I mean, yourself, Qadir, and we worked for a lot of contractor organizations for many years ourselves, and it's the same thing. A lot of times we arrive to our companies have put us on a project, and we've done health and safety work, but we haven't done it for that similar industry. It's going to take us time to learn. So yes, for every contractor, we have to appreciate that there is going to be a learning stage, and we have to understand that. But we just have to make sure that we provide that education, that level of education. We're very, very clear about it. We have an identified training matrix for every position that we assess and we stick by. And that is really the only thing that we can actually do to manage this. And then with time, maybe we can use our observational programs, we can use our near-miss programs to try and fine-tune these things, to obviously develop that education, to identify where there's gaps, and then to go back to the board and say, like, yeah, we want to work with these guys on certain areas.
Thanks, Adil. It has been a very nice session, and I found that you are energetic and very seasonal presenter. I know since beginning. I've been your student. I've been your friend. I learned many things in the time of 2007. When we were together.
I'm the same. I've been on your sessions as well. I really like the one about, you have a very, very good one on that scaffolding. So whenever anybody asks me about scaffolding parts, it's like there's a guy go onto YouTube and Google and put in Qadir Mahmood scaffolding, and then yours comes up. So that's a very good one.
No, really appreciate that because as we know that when we are going for the learning curve, the demonstration and practical is very, very important in training, and you are also the learning and development facilitator. So I always try to make things easier for the people so that they can enjoy and they learn and then further cascade the same. So we are almost done, and I want to thank you once again. But before we close, I need you to quickly summarize that quick tips to improve the contractor performance. What type of proactive and reactive monitoring methods to be applied to uplift the performance of a contractor. Though we have covered it, but in a nutshell, quickly, a quick brief, so that it will be a nice conclusion.
You have to start off with, first thing that you need to do, go back to your company, have what we call a contractor HSE management standard, right? That standard needs to come from high up in your contract, in your company. Everybody needs to sign on it, from the top person, from your CEO, from the operational officer, from your health and safety guy, your maintenance manager, your production manager. They need to all buy into this. You set the basic standard of how you're going to be doing the hiring, how you're going to be, what are some of the things that you're going to be putting into place before the contractor mobilizes. You're going to be very, very clear on what the scope of the work is. And then you start going to do your basic assessments before even going, selecting a contractor. You're going to start looking at who's out there, cultural assessments, finding out what their culture is. You're going to understand what type of contract you're going to be using for this particular contract. You're going to, as an HSE, from an HSE section, you want to know what your approach to that contract is. We call them HSE modes of approach. Okay, it's something that in contractor management maybe you can Google, and it's out there, and you will find it as well. So you want to look at the modes there, and then you want to start setting the standard for evaluations, selecting your contractor, but after that, pre-mobilization, what you need to do, how you need to introduce everything to the contractor, the basic levels of training, and then what you want to do throughout, what kind of things. I'm going to have a monthly meeting. I'm going to have a weekly audit. I'm going to apply these incentives to the program. Normally, at the end of the program, at the end of the contract as well, you always want to start looking at collecting a database of lessons learned as well. Okay. So again, what are the things that you've learned from the time that you've worked with that certain contractor, and what are the certain levels learned? And I was going to show you guys something here, but it's not with me. Qadir, will you give me literally 1 second? I will go and get this thing I was going to show you. I will come back now. You can always refer to the IOSH Contractor HSE Management Program as well itself. It's quite a comprehensive booklets of a lot of the documentation that you might need. It goes through the various steps of contractor management, certification, cultural considerations, how you look at the culture. So I do recommend, guys, there's a lot of case studies of what are some of the areas that you want to look at. So it's a good education program and it gets you basically completely ready to go to within your organization to be able to strongly develop a contractor HSE management program, which takes you throughout those whole stages of a contract in the future. So it's something that I definitely do recommend. It's an IOSH approved program. With IOSH certification. I think it was a 5-day certificate, 5-day program, but I mean with COVID now it's been offered in a 3-day program as well, which is online. Very, very interactive, a lot of case studies, and the good thing at the end is all of the stuff that I talked about that you would use to assess contractors is actually provided. So you actually have a lot of the forms that you can actually use. There's a lot of software that is suggested, a lot of questionnaires, a lot of these things you actually get, and it's all based on a lot of best practices and benchmarking internationally. So it's a perfect thing where we've worked on with a lot of organizations worldwide on this to basically develop those programs and how to obviously implement it in every part when it comes to managing contractors as well. So it's maybe something that you would like to have a look at, Qadir, or any of our attendees today might want to further educate themselves. It's been a good program since it came out in November last year. We were already implementing this in about 9 countries. So it's very, even with COVID, it's been offered. I mean, we've had this offered in Europe, in the Middle East, West Africa, Far Asia. So there's been a lot of training organizations who've taken this on, and they're developing. They've been offering this to organizations as a whole or individual candidates. So very, very good program. That's again somebody who wants to further educate themselves in that and how to manage contractors from a health and safety point of view in what I call the 21st century. In the modern day, it's quite beneficial.
Great. It has been a very nice session. We are almost 52 minutes, and it was really interesting, full of knowledge, good learning, good experience. And you also refreshed my own CPD, so I will put it as a CPD in my CM IOSH and this IOSH learning and development portfolio. And once again, I'm really thanks for you. I feel owed, and I really love your time. And see you soon with some other topics and some interesting things to help our generation to learn more about HSE.
Thank you very much, Qadir. It's an absolute pleasure to see you and to talk to you after so long. Really appreciate it, man. Hopefully we can get involved in something else soon as well, and then do something similar on a different topic.
Thank you very much. I will now just close the session. I want to thank you once again, Adil, and okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. And I want to thank you as well, because you spend a couple of minutes, means not couple of minutes, but you spend 52 to 53 minutes with us. And Adil is a seasonal professional, and he given us all his experience, and he summarized it very well from client, owner, contractor, subcontractor, and even contractor management system. And I hope it will be a useful session for all of us. And one of the topic he shared with us, or a new qualification introduced by IOSH, was a contractor management system. And if anybody wants to learn more about it, please feel free to go to the IOSH website and get information and how you can do that. So once again, thank you very much. Please watch again some interesting topics in coming weeks, and share with your friends who were not able to watch all the session. So thank you very much. Take care. See you soon with a new topic and with the new learning. Take care. Bye.